I'm Jessica Munch. I am a school psychologist by training, and the past 2 years I've worked at Moravia Park with pre-K teachers. Ms. Flores is one of those teachers who was here last year and this year with me. And I'm actually on the Prevention and Intervention for Early Learners team the past 2 years, which is we are at certain schools, and our whole job is to prevent inappropriate referrals to special education. And so through that, what we do is a lot of consultation with teachers, some trainings and things like that, and we really help work and problem solve with them on behavioral issues, as well as hopefully helping them analyzing their academic data and how they can differentiate for students if there's any academic interventions that we can assist them in providing in the classroom, and everything along those kinds of lines. So I've known Ms. Flores both years that she's worked here, and so it's been really nice to see the progression that she has made since she started. At the beginning of last year, as a new teacher and a teacher who is going through TFA, there are a lot of needs because she's never done anything like this before. So one of the things that I was really happy that she was able to do last year was participate in a class that some of my colleagues were running and that I participated in as well, called Incredible Years Teacher Classroom Management Training. And that started about halfway through the year, and that was a class that was very time intensive. It was 15 seat hours, and then there's also a lot of time taken in the classroom and in consultation where myself and another person on the project, speech language pathologist, would, as a part of it, Ms. Flores had to do an individual behavior plan for a student, and we would come in and observe how she was implementing it and provide her feedback. So not only was it a lot of time outside of the classroom, and she already had TFA classes and coursework that she was doing, but she also was so dedicated that she voluntarily signed up for this additional class to help with her classroom management skills. And then as a result of that class, she really improved. She was taking a lot of what we talked about and doing whole classroom types of interventions to help with the students' transitions between different areas of the classroom. We also saw her implement a lot of whole class reinforcers. So, I just mentioned one time about this book, Have You Filled a Bucket Today, and showed it to her, and she took it and ran with it and started with her whole class, giving them positive reinforcement for doing things like sitting correctly on the carpet, which was an area that she had identified that was a little bit problematic. And then also we saw really good behavioral gains with a lot of individual students that we worked with last year through this case, through this class. She implemented really specific interventions for these kids, and we saw really positive behavioral outcomes. And what's nice too is that we saw this year that she's continued a lot of those things. So she still sings her specific transition song when it's time for classroom centers, and I've seen a really big growth in that in her classroom. And she also uses a lot of things that we talked about at the end of the last year after classroom management. But she also has then continued with seeking out our advice. And I always am impressed when someone really analyzes what's going on in their classroom and looks at both their strengths and weaknesses and asks for help when they need it in the areas that they need it. So her class as a whole, I think, is functioning better in terms of their routines and everything like that, but there still are students who maybe have specific needs, and so she has one student in particular this year who's different than any student that she's had before, and she has been very willing and to do whatever it is that we suggest, and she, throughout this whole entire school year, has followed through on some of the recommendations and things that I helped her with in the beginning of the year, such as having a student use a visual schedule, and she does a lot of transition warnings for the student, and coaching her through social issues that the student has, and providing her with a lot of choice and then reinforcement based on her making an appropriate choice and handling her emotions better. And the other thing that Ms. Flores does really well, especially with these types of students, is really making connections not just with the students and making good personal relationships with those students, which helps with the classroom management, but also making good relationships with the parents. Like, we just had the parent here talking to us about that child in particular. And I think that they feel like they can come in and talk to her about whatever issue they're having. Like we had another kid earlier this year that he was having a lot of trouble separating from his parents, and Ms. Flores really worked hard with getting the parent to do certain things that we were suggesting, and that has worked out really well because the student has really come a long way with that as well. In terms of academics, Ms. Flores definitely makes an impact with her students there as well, and I think that has gotten a lot stronger over the past going on to 2 years now, as she's become more comfortable with how to present information in the classroom, how to use more visuals, those types of things. I do a lot with helping the teachers put together their classroom data in terms of academics, as well as behavioral, but talking more about the academic stuff. Ms. Flores, I would say, is one of the teachers who really understands data and who can actually use it really well. The only teacher that I work with that actually uses Excel with me, so I always like seeing her charts and graphs, because that's what I like also. But her data looks really good this year. I just facilitated a team meeting where we looked at the difference between the beginning of the year baseline test scores for their students and the middle of the year baseline test scores for their students. And Ms. Flores' class made the biggest gains from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year when we're looking specifically at the data, which is really impressive for a second-year teacher. She also, I know, just used some of that similar data, and 12 of her kids, when she looks at her middle of the year, are at 100%, which is really great because that means that they're meeting all the standards that they need to be meeting right now. We also, when we're analyzing our data from the middle of the year, we were looking at the specific standards that are measured on that, and when we looked at it, her class had the highest improvement in rhyming, which is a really difficult skill, especially for our pre-K kids, and she was able to really analyze what some of the things are that she thinks has benefited them in this area, and some of the teachers, I think, benefited from hearing that and will maybe use her suggestions about continuously including rhyming skills in her station work and that kind of thing, so that the kids are continuously growing even if she's not necessarily explicitly teaching it every day. Just in general, I am always really impressed that Ms. Flores takes feedback really well, and she really does try to implement whatever it is, whether it's academics or behavioral suggestions, and I have seen a lot of growth, classroom as a whole, academics, and individual students, behavioral, social, emotional functioning based on the things that she does with her kids.
Right. Thanks much.
You're welcome.